If you've ever tried to force a new habit through sheer willpower, you already know it rarely sticks. You track your progress, set your alarms, and eventually you fail. That's because you are trying to rewrite your behavior while ignoring the underlying value structure that generated it in the first place. When psychologists study people who break decades-long addictions or escape deep depressions, they often find a pattern that defies the slow, gradual approach. They call it a quantum change. Like tectonic plates, the pressure accumulates invisibly for years along a fault line, and then, in a single moment, everything snaps. The shift happens overnight. Your deeply held beliefs about yourself function like an operating system. This code was largely installed when you were a child, and your brain emotionally defends it. When you try to install a new habit that contradicts your core identity, your brain interprets that data as a threat and throws up a firewall to block the code. You cannot change a behavior by treating it like a standalone app. To override these patterns, you have to crash the current operating system and rewrite the identity that sustains it. Over the next 5 minutes, we are going to walk through a 5-step framework designed to surface the identity you've been protecting, make it intolerable, and break it wide open. To do this, you need to step away from the passive scroll. Grab a pen and paper or open a blank document on your phone. You have to commit to being entirely honest with yourself, even when it gets uncomfortable. By the time this video ends, you will have a physical, written blueprint outlining the exact dimensions of your psychological cage and a plan to break out of it today. Step 1 is simple data collection. Write down the behaviors you want to stop doing. This might include overeating, falling into workaholism, or shutting down emotionally and refusing to ask for help. As you write these down, do not judge yourself. If you judge the behavior, you will hide it. Just list the concrete actions you struggle with, whether they've been running in the background for years or are a recent development. Now for step 2. Look at your list and figure out the single underlying identity that unites all of these disparate behaviors. What belief makes these actions a natural side effect? For example, overworking and failing to ask for help stem from a single premise. My underlying identity is that I am more reliable than others, and I trust my judgment exclusively. Mapping these behaviors to a root belief provides a clear explanation for why they persist. Self-destructive habits stop looking like random failures and start looking like logical outputs of that core identity. Step 3 is building your anti-vision. Humans feel the sting of losing something much more intensely than the satisfaction of gaining something equal. We are going to leverage that loss aversion. Instead of visualizing an abstract future, we are going to force you to look at the destruction you are currently building. I stopped smoking after waking up at 3 a.m. in Boston during a blizzard. I was out of cigarettes and forced myself to walk through sub-zero winds to buy a pack. I felt pure self-hatred watching myself do it. That visceral disgust did more than any positive visualization ever could. You need to recreate that certainty. Look at the identity you wrote down in step 2 and treat it like an enemy. Write out an exhaustive list of every single way this trait sabotages your life. Do not hold back here. Blame this identity for the fact that your partner is checked out. Blame it for your stalled career. And blame it for your lost friendships. Keep writing until you feel a visceral, physical disgust with the person you are choosing to be. It is easier to stay in a fog, vaguely dissatisfied, but not so unhappy that you have to act. This manufactured self-hatred burns away that comfortable fog, forcing you to clearly see the walls of the cage you've built. Now that you can see the cage, step 4 is deciding who you actually need to become. Write down the opposite of your toxic identity. In my case, the contrary identity is, I am less reliable than I think, and other people are far more reliable than I give them credit for. Step 5 is finding the crack. You need to identify one small, real-world action you can take right now that provides proof that this new identity is real. It has to be an action that directly contradicts your old operating system. For me, that meant hiring a coach. Giving up control and asking someone else for direction shatters my illusion of self-sufficiency. It physically proves that I need to rely on others. Here is the test. If doing this action doesn't make you feel deeply uncomfortable or nauseous, you chose the wrong one. You want something that actively fights your old code. The anti-vision you wrote shows you the exact dimensions of your cage, but actually executing this one terrifying action is the crowbar that begins to pry those bars apart. Look at the paper in front of you. You now have a diagnosis of the identity holding you back, a brutal anti-vision that makes staying the same intolerable, and a specific tool for escape. Theoretical work is over. Simply watching this video and nodding along changes nothing about your life. Transformation requires proof in the physical world. Log off, walk away from the screen, and execute the uncomfortable action you wrote in Step 5. If you are ready to break the code you've been running your whole life, start by typing your chosen action in the comments below. Make a public commitment, and then go do it.